Welcome to Inflection Point Podcast, where we cultivate change from the inside out as we ponder the Cairo question. Will Cairo have to protest in his lifetime for the birthright to freely and peacefully exist in the skin in which he was born? We stand on the belief that dismantling racism goes beyond laws and legislation or politics and economics. Here, anti-racism activation is presented as an inside job where personal transformation and accountability impact social change. So take a seat at the anti-racism activation table with Inflection Point Podcast.
Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the newest episode of Inflection Point Podcast. This is the spot where we are dedicated to the art of listening and authentic conversation. We challenge our audience to listen actively and intentionally for the purpose of self-awareness, understanding, personal transformation, and ultimately social impact. Our 2024 theme is community conversations. I am your host, Anita Russell, and here's a quick hello from co-hosts Mavis and Gail.
Hello, I'm Mavis Bauman.
Hi, I'm Gail Hunter. Welcome.
Wonderful. So I am super excited, number one, because we started this really incredible community conversation series where we really focused on the principles of Kwanzaa, not just naming the principles of Kwanzaa, but really talking about it more from a personal perspective. Like, how does that principle relate to me, not just between Christmas and New Year's, but how does that relate to me on an everyday basis? So we've been talking about them. We've gone through all of them, with the exception of the last two, which we're going to be talking about today. And I'm really happy that the way we scheduled these conversations, that it flowed really nicely right into Black History Month. And so I see the conversation as an extension of Black history as we're moving into the whole entire month and all of that. So we are going to get the conversation started. So the last two principles that we're going to be talking about today are Kuumba, which is creativity, and Imani, which is faith. So I'm going to pass the baton over to Mavis, and she's going to describe the meaning of the principle Kuumba and her personal connection or experience with that meaning. Take it away, Mavis.
Thanks, Anita. I am actually going to be talking about a fellow I saw in a film this last week. He just personifies creativity. And people might have heard about the Oscar-nominated film about the Barber of Little Rock. It is just a fascinating little film. And like I say, it just exhibits the kind of creativity you can find in people, in small communities, and the kind of creativity that Kuumba focuses on, supports. I'm not sure how to say that right now, but anyway, I'll describe this principle for you. It is a commitment to being creative within the context of the national community vocation of restoring our people to their traditional greatness and thus leaving our community more beneficial and beautiful than we, each generation that is, inherited it. The principle has both social and spiritual dimensions and is deeply rooted in social and sacred teachings of African societies. And lo and behold, the kind of the seeds for this particular principle comes from the culture of ancient Egypt, where there is a spiritual and ethical element, an obligation to constantly renew and restore the great works, the legacy of ancestors, the creative energy of the leader and of the nation. They even encourage right relationships with the environment. I needed these principles when I was a kid, I'll tell you. These are so fascinating. Anyway, these concepts reflect a fundamental cultural thrust of the 1960s, and they informed the conception and development of Kwanzaa. And of course, they became the goal and value of Kwanzaa and the principle practiced through Kuumba. I've heard it pronounced a couple of different ways. One other definition says this: to do as much as we can in the way we can in order to leave our community more beautiful and beneficial than we inherited it. What I love about this concept of creativity, and I keep hearing this echo about ancestors and the future, how, certainly everyone that was part of this film about the barber of Little Rock talk about what they want to be able to give their kids, the next generation, the state of the community they live in. They, of course, don't want to live hand to mouth. They want to have ownership of things. Another one definition of Kuumba goes a little more deeply and more personal, I think, into the Black culture. Creativity, this definition says, creativity is in our blood. We create as naturally as we breathe. From music to clothing, business, inventions, hairstyles, oh yeah, instruments, and more. Creativity is a part of our culture. And he talks about practicing whatever creativity comes through you. If you're a songwriter, practice writing songs, practice writing new songs, do the thing that makes you express your uniqueness. And it helps other people, other cultures to learn about you as well. So it's reinforcing all the way around. There were 3 principles that he mentions within this whole idea of creativity. There's aesthetic beauty. Without our creativity, a lot of aspects of American culture would be non-existent, without the Black influence, from dance moves to music genres, even colorful aspects of the English language. Oh, yeah. And hundreds of inventions, so many that aren't even counted for. When we produce, we create a better functioning and looking world as a result. The next concept there is ethical influence. Ethically, when we create for others to consume it, it impacts those of other communities in a way that helps people understand our perspective and so on. Our art, again, opens closed minds, expands perspective, and educates those that are ignorant to our experience. And the final point there is spiritual awareness. When we become more aware of ourselves and our creativity, when we create, sometimes we're surprised what comes out of us. I think we've all experienced that. Sometimes when I write in my journal, I think, where did that come from? There are things in all of us that aren't tapped. This fellow characterizes it this way, that our souls are making art as a beautiful release. Every single one of us is an artist. So now I'm going to talk about this fellow who is featured in The Barber of Little Rock. And I just happened to catch it on YouTube the other night. I felt so lucky. It's like a 36-minute film. And he is focused on a community in Arkansas. And he says that economic justice is having a real opportunity to create generational wealth. And he talks about the wealth gap. And he says it's not $1 million problem or $1 billion problem. It's $1 trillion problem, a never-ending story. So it talks about how, in kind of common terms, how life happens to all of us. We can't pay our light bill. We get sick. We can't go to work. The car breaks down. Some people just don't have the backing, to handle those unpredicted events. So Arlo Washington is the fellow's name. I can't believe I didn't say it yet. Arlo Washington says, my purpose in life is to advance equity, create opportunities, and build community. So the really cool part about this, I'm going to try and stick to my timing here, Anita, but he started in his own barbershop teaching others how to become barbers. In the community that they're in, there was literally no other opportunity. There were no businesses. They were in basically a red-lined district. Banks won't loan to anybody. There was one fellow who had a food truck, and in his food business, he used a certain bank's credit card, I don't know which one, to pay, to accept payment from customers. And even that bank that was making money off those transactions would not give him a loan. And so banking while Black apparently is a thing. And Arlo Washington wants to make sure that, that capital, he said, is the blood of the community. It's got to circulate around. He wants to make sure that that capital is available. So he started teaching people in his barbershop how to cut hair. And since 2008, he has trained, well, the words he used was created opportunities for more than 1,500 licensed barbers. These are people coming out of prison, people that were just not able to get that traction in the economy. And I just think it's so creative. He was talking about the barbershop as the sort of the heartbeat of a Black community, where people share information, they talk about problems. He said it was one of the early places that they received healthcare, that they would help each other out with, he said, tooth pulling and other things. So I think that it's really interesting and creative that he launched it from the barbershop. The second thing he did was establish a CDFI, which is a community development financial institution called People Trust. And they offer it's a nonprofit loan fund. It's backed by the feds. So he uses this money that he's got, that he has access to through this fund to give small loans to the people in his community, such as, one couple, their house burned down. They had nothing. They lost everything. He said, would it help $1,500 so you can have some clothes? Just go get some clothes and start looking, for work. Another person, a woman, was out of prison. You get out of prison, you have nothing. She said, I didn't even have a toothbrush. Didn't even have the money to buy a toothbrush. And so this guy is bridging that gap for the community. And the cool thing too is he makes sure that that community, that circulation, stays locally. So there's one bank in this area, very small. The area is not so small, but just one bank that he started, this People Trust. And across the highway, there are, hundreds of them, like a bank on every corner, which is really interesting to see that contrast. Anyway, I guess I'll just wrap up by saying that I just love the way he created from where he was, from what he knew, and how he was close to the people. He wanted to give them a way to stay connected, to gain skills, to earn money that then would benefit others. And somebody starts a food business, other people have a place to go and eat, and then the economy in that area starts going the other direction. So I just want to give a shout out to Arlo Washington. I want to be like him. I think he's awesome. So any questions, ladies?
Well, I don't have a question, just a comment.
Sure.
I love the fact that you brought out that story. I had never heard of this gentleman. That just goes to show you that our history is so rich.
Mm.
It's so incredibly rich that you'll never get to the point where you just know everything that there is to know. Like, I literally today just found out that there is a site over, what you can relate to this, Gail, there's a site over in Homewood that there's this big move towards renovating this site, and it is the Negro National Opera House right in Homewood. No idea. I just found that out myself yesterday. Right? So there are so many hidden gems. And that's why when I started this off, we started up this conversation, the hidden potential of the 7 Kwanzaa principles, right? Because that potential is there, but it's also being realized. And Mr. Arlo, what was his name again?
Arlo Washington.
Arlo Washington is a perfect example of that being realized.
Exactly.
When I did one of my principles, the cooperative economics, I talked about Ujamaa,
Right.
which is a
Oh.
shop over in on the Hill District in the Black community in the city of Pittsburgh. They live that principle.
Yeah.
Mm.
Right? They live that principle, and there's so much power in that. So I just wanted to comment on that and thank you for giving me a piece of history that I wasn't even aware of.
Well, actually, it's current. It's current. So this film was Oscar nominated for an Oscar for 2024.
Oh, okay. So it's contemporary history.
It's contemporary, yeah.
Yes,
He was building on the legacy of his mother, who was trying to do similar things. And I just thought it was so energizing and creative. One of the fellows that was in the car with him said, we just want to own something. I want to own something so I can give something to my kids. I want to have control over it so it can't be taken away. And he said, this is about being free.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Mavis. Gail, did you have any comments?
But just that it's just incredible if you think about what he actually created and how many people he touched by just looking at what he did in his own life, right? And using that to teach others, to give them that ability to be free and independent. Yeah, it's just beautiful.
Right. He even helped people that he was training relate to each other. A couple of men out of prison, he had them just stare and look at each other. You've all seen that exercise for a couple of minutes. And he said, think about that person and what they've been through. So he's not only teaching people how to cut hair, he's sharing ideas about how to relate to each other and not respond out of your wounds. Beautiful thing.
Compassion and empathy.
Right.
And I think another aspect that it just kind of popped into my mind is that these principles also blow holes in the idea, that false idea of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. That's not really what gets you. That's not what moves you forward. Nobody pulls themselves up by their bootstraps.
Well, you got to have boots first, right?
Right. And somebody made those boots.
Yes.
Right. So the point being, when you look at these principles, it just kind of knocks the power out of that idea. For me, anyway, it knocks the power out of that idea of bootstrapping, because we don't do that. We don't do that.
You know what came to my white mind was the kind of programmed judgment I have had driving through that kind of community that did not have restaurants, that did not have banks, that didn't feel alive. I won't feel that way anymore. I'll, look for the activity.
Absolutely, because it's there.
It's there, exactly.
Definitely
It's
there. Okay, so we're going to shift our conversation over to Gail, and she's going to talk about the principle of Imani, which is faith.
Right. So the seventh principle is Imani, which means faith, and is essentially very profound and enduring belief in the commitment to all that is of value to us as a family. And I speak as a white person, but this is really written for people that are Black, of color. Value to us as a family, community, people, and culture. Faith is put forth as the last principle, as unity is put forth as the first principle for a definite reason. It is to indicate that without unity, we cannot begin our most important work, but without faith, we cannot sustain it. And this is I think this is a very critical point that most of us probably don't even think about, but I think both are crucial, right? So unity brings us together and harnesses the strengths, the faith in each other and the good and the right, and that which is beautiful, inspires and sustains the coming together and the commitment to take the work to its end. In the context of African spirituality, it begins with a belief in the Creator and in the positiveness of the creation, and logically leads to a belief in the essential goodness and possibility of the human personality. For in all African spiritual traditions, from Egypt on, it is taught that we are in the image of the Creator and thus capable of ultimate righteousness and creativity through self-mastery and development in the context of positive support. So think about that, but that's in the context of positive support, and that's the community, right? The support of others. It's not just that we are this island going out there and doing this.
Right.
Therefore, faith in ourselves is key here, and faith in our capacity as humans to live righteously, to self-correct, to support, care for, and be responsible for each other, and eventually create the just and good society. And I think that's something that everybody should be saying.
Mm. Yes.
So Mary McLeod Bethune, and I may be pronouncing her name wrong, and I apologize. She was an American educator and philanthropist and a humanitarian and the civil rights activist. She also founded the National Council of Negro Women in 1935, and she established the organization's flagship journal, Afro-American Women's Journal. And she presided as president and leader for a myriad of African-American women's organizations, including the National Association for Colored Women and the National Youth Administration, Negro Division. So she says that saying the greatest faith is, again, faith in the Creator, but the great also faith is faith in ourselves. And she states that without faith, nothing is possible. With it, nothing is impossible. Also, she taught that faith in the masses of our people is central to our progress as a people. The measure of our progress as a race is in precise relation to the depth of faith in our people held by our leaders. And she reminds us that as a community in struggle, there's no substitute for belief in our people and their capacity to take control of their destiny and daily lives and shape them in their own image and interests. This is fundamental to any future, she says, that we dare design and pursue. And I think that's huge, it's crucial. She says, we must believe in the value and validity, righteousness, victory, and significance of our struggle for liberation and a higher level of human life. And it must be tied to our belief in our capacity to assume and carry out with dignity and decisiveness the role history has assigned us. And that role is to set in motion a new history of humankind, and in alliance with other oppressed and progressive people, pose a new paradigm of human society and human relations. We should not try to imitate others, but rather invent and begin to develop that which we all believe in is possible. And I think that, and that's what I'm saying, her ideas and take on this is so profound that it's not just for people of color, it's for the human race.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And she also went on to say that that she also has faith in ourselves and in our Creator, but in our mothers and fathers, our grandfathers and grandmothers, and in our elders, our youth, our future, faith in all that makes us beautiful and strong. Faith that through hard work, long struggle, and a whole lot of love and understanding, we can again step back on the stage of human history as a free, proud, and productive people. It is in this context that we can surely speak our own special cultural truth to the world and make our own unique contribution to the forward flow of human history. Amen. Amen. Right.
Amen is right.
Yeah, I couldn't say it any clearer or better. And so you wanted us to look at how's that affecting, how did that play out in even my life? And I think faith has been a key, has been key in my life in many different ways, from growing up and different issues that have happened to me, being a survivor of abuse and domestic violence, and as a single parent. I mean, I think what got me through all those different issues in my life and times of my life was my faith, and that I believed, not just I believed in God, I believed in Creator, but I believed in humanity. I believed in my humanity, and that I had the capacity, and that what I really also want as a therapist, as a healer, I wanted to be able to share that with people, that with other people that may not have the ability or the financial ability to afford to get treatment and to have access to some of the techniques that I was using with people in my practice. And so that was the beginning of how I actually got started with OMA, the nonprofit that I run, and that we provide holistic education. We provide programs for a variety of different adults and issues, and for youth, to help them see that potential within them, and also the potential within each other, right? That we really can choose to create a different way of living this life, in spite of everything that's going on in this world at the moment. I still believe that with that faith that that's going to prevail. So I found this to be this was really very much pertinent to my life.
Pertinent, right?
Mhm.
And you know
forward.
what I hear, Gail, is this is the pillar behind what we're doing here in this podcast, that
Right, right.
we have faith that people can change. They can learn and change and develop that compassion for humanity.
Yes.
It's big. It's going to be glacial,
Right.
but it will happen.
Mhm.
It will happen. Yeah.
Well, it will happen, and it is happening, and
Right, right.
and we all need to support that, right? We have to begin to recognize that we are one humanity here, and that what has happened to people of color has been atrocious, and we have the ability to change that and to reframe our own distorted beliefs if they're there, and to begin to access what is true. And that's what I think this podcast has been trying to do, is to provide that information.
And I love that phrase that you used, the forward flow of human history. That's what this is.
Exactly.
Mr. Washington and the whole Barber approach that he uses, that is the forward flow of human history. And we all, as contemporary human beings, have a role to play in that forward flow of human history. Not only that, but that forward flow of human history is exactly what I'm talking about every time I talk about the Cairo question. That's what that whole question is about. And the answer to that question is rooted in what we do. It's rooted in the decisions and the choices and the rejections of certain ideas that we make today that will flow into what the future has the potential to look like.
Yeah, I tell people that when we change that within ourselves in the present, and we change that belief system, those belief systems, and the paradigm begins to change, we have the ability in that step to heal those who came before us and those who are going to come after us, right? And so it honors as what I was saying, it honors both the past, the present, and those that are Cairo.
Absolutely, absolutely. So it's almost time for us to take a break. And when we come back, I'm going to read through just a quick review of all of the principles that we've talked about. And the thing that really jumps out at me is the use of the word community. The word community lies in almost, not all of them, but almost all of the principles.
Right.
So when we come back after the break, I'm going to go over, very quickly go over the list. And then I want to talk a little bit about just some things that are going on in the city of Pittsburgh that are really resonating with these principles. So we'll take a break and then we'll come back and continue the conversation. So welcome back to Inflection Point Podcast and our continuing community conversation for 2024. Our topic has been a series that we've been doing where we've been focusing on the Kwanzaa Principles. And so we kind of made this decision that we wanted to take the Kwanzaa Principles outside of the confines of that Christmas to New Year's and really talk about them in a much broader, much more universal kind of way. So we've been talking about the 7 principles of Kwanzaa for the last almost 7 episodes, I guess. Or the last 3 or 4 episodes. So we're kind of winding down at this point. And what I want to do now is just kind of quickly go over all of the principles just to give a summary of the things that we've been talking about. And then I want to switch the conversation and talk about some very specific things that are happening in my home city of Pittsburgh, which kind of reflect everything that we've been talking about with all of the principles of Kwanzaa. So I'm just going to go with them. The 7 principles of Kwanzaa, or the Nguzo Saba. It begins with a unity, umoja. It is to strive and maintain unity in the family, community, nation, and race. Next, we have self-determination, kujichagulia, to define ourselves, name ourselves, create for ourselves, and speak for ourselves. That is the essence of the definition of self-determination. Collective work and responsibility, ujima, to build and maintain our community together and make our brothers and sisters' problems our problems, and to solve them together, right? Cooperative economics, ujamaa. This is one of my favorite ones, and it's mainly because there's a store over on the Hill District area of Pittsburgh, and it's called Ujamaa, and it's literally one of my favorite places to be in the city of Pittsburgh. Cooperative economics, ujamaa, is to build and maintain our own stores, shops, and businesses, and to profit from them together, right? Not profit in conflict with one another, but to profit from them together, right? And then we have purpose, which is nia, to make our collective vocation the building and developing of our community in order to restore our people to their traditional greatness. I love that. I love that. And then the final 2, which we talk about today, Kuumba, which is creativity, to do always as much as we can in the way we can in order to leave our community more beautiful and more beneficial than we inherited it, right? And then finally, Imani, or faith, is to believe with all of our heart in our people, our parents, our teachers, our leaders, and the righteousness and victory of our struggle. Those are some powerful words. And I would say in most of them, you find the word community. 1, 2, 3, 4, about 4 or 5 of them, you find the word community, right? And it's this whole idea of the things that we can do in community with one another, to support one another, to lift up one another, to love one another, to be creative with one another, to cooperate with one another. All of these things that are embedded in these principles are things, they're ideals that we can adopt and adapt into our everyday life as individuals, as members of a family, as members in a workforce, in organizations, and ultimately in the community and in the world, right? These principles are so incredibly powerful and empowering. So Gail, Mavis, any points that you want to make before I move into this last piece that I wanted to talk about?
I have a quick comment. As you were talking, I was thinking about the word interlocking came up, and I knew I had read that somewhere in this particular principle, but it says one has an interrelatedness and interlocking of principles. You know, you're talking about the community, and therefore a similar relationship in the practice of them. I love that idea of interlocking. You know, a lot of self-help that comes our way is very individualized. This is about community, as you said, interlocking with each other and succeeding together. Yeah, I love that word.
Yes, so do I. And this is the first time that I can say that I've spent so much time in the literature and reading about the Kwanzaa principles, because there are so many instances and so many examples where people are living exactly like this, right? And so those nuggets are there. And so the question becomes, when you think about yourself as an individual, when you think about yourself within the context of some of the spaces that I mentioned, your family, your home life, your work life, your church, all of these different spaces that you move in, how are you moving in those spaces? Are you interlocking with other people in those spaces? Right?
Yeah.
And doing it in a very cooperative kind of way, because we don't have to live the way that we are living.
That's
We
right.
really don't have to. We have the power to change and make things be different. As Gail had pointed out, this forward flow of human history, that is so powerful, because what that means is the decisions that I make for my life, the decisions that the two of you make for your life, and the decisions that anybody out there who is listening to these words, the decisions that you make today are going to impact people tomorrow. So what do you want that forward flow that comes out of you? What do you want that to look like? How do you want that to impact the world? How do you want that to impact people around you? What are you teaching your children? All of that. We are in a golden moment right now, that inflection point where we can really bend the arc in a positive, equitable kind of way and begin to really, really dismantle these principles of racism,
Exactly.
the institutionalized principles of racism. Those things are built into the very fabric of our country. We have the potential to do so much better. And it begins with us, the three of us, our words going out, people impacted by our words. They're interlocking with somebody else. They're spreading the word. They're talking about this. That's that grass movement that I keep talking about, that grass movement, because eventually that power that's coming, it's like an earthquake, right? When this grass movement erupts like an earthquake, the things that are on the surface begin to crumble and fall because they can't withstand the power that is rising up from below. That's what I see. And all
That's
the
faith, girl. That's faith. You know, I mean, to
absolutely
have a belief that it will be that big, that much of a
it has that potential.
Yeah, it's there.
And each of us
Because that
has
potential lies individually and uniquely within each and every one of us.
Right.
That's where the real power is.
I don't have to change for you. I don't have to change you or anybody. I just have to change me.
Yep.
I can step up and be that new imprint, that new, right? That new path, that new voice.
Absolutely.
new bit of flow into history.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to switch the conversation. I mean, it's the same conversation, but I want to focus on a particular aspect. So I have been extremely excited over the past maybe 3 weeks or so, maybe 3 weeks or so. I mean, Mavis and Gail, you've heard me talk about my office space. Like I have office space downtown. Anybody out there who's familiar with the city of Pittsburgh, I have office space on Smithfield Street in this shared co-working space. And the name of that space, well, the official name of the building itself is the Pitt Building, but the name of the co-working space is the Emerald City Pittsburgh. And there are some absolutely incredible things that are going on in that space. I mean, mind-blowing, mind-boggling in a very powerful and empowering kind of way. So there are a number of people that are connected to this space that I'm referring to. One of them is a woman by the name of Camille Bailey. Another is Samantha Black. Another is Alexis Russell, and Alexis Russell actually happens to be my cousin. Yay. And then there's another woman by the name of Amanda Bay. And there are so many other people that are connected into this work that I'm not even aware of, people that are on their boards and, you know, all of that I'm not aware of. But these are the people that I come in contact with on a regular basis whenever I am in that space, right? And the beauty of what has been happening, or what has happened, is they have been able to purchase the pit building, the entire block, right? Which includes 3 levels, right? The first level is storefronts, right? So there's a bunch of storefronts that are there, and they've got some really incredible ideas about the types of businesses that they want to be in those spaces, because the primary impetus between this work is to advance economic justice for Black communities by bridging people, knowledge networks, redirecting resources, and supporting the unique needs of Black businesses. And I'm bringing this up because these individuals are the epitome of what can happen when you apply the Kwanzaa principles on a daily basis, on a regular basis. It's amazing. So there are a number of components. I mentioned Emerald City, which is the co-working space. It's 12,000 square feet of co-working, event, and social space that is dedicated to catapulting Black entrepreneurs and businesses to wealth and regional success. Right? So the 2 other arms of this whole entire miraculous thing that is happening is the first is the Greenwood Project. And the idea and the emphasis behind the Greenwood Project is honoring the historically prosperous community of Greenwood in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which we all know was known as Black Wall Street. And when we started this conversation of really looking at the principles of Kwanzaa, we talked about how those principles are what made Tulsa, Oklahoma possible, or made the Greenwood community, Black Wall Street possible, because that is the way that we worked with one another cooperatively, in community, empowering one another, and doing all of that while being surrounded by racism and segregation and all of that. So we've proven that we can do this. Rosewood is another one, Seneca Village in New York. And you think about, which is now Central Park, and any number of Black communities that are now under lakes in different parts of this country. But the power that we have inherent in people such as Camille and Samantha, Alexis and Amanda, and all the other people that are behind this work, is what will bring us into that forward flow of human history that we were talking about earlier, right? So the Greenwood Project is an organization that benefits diverse, underserved students, as well as partner firms in their efforts towards enhanced diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. And then I read a little bit about the Greenwood Plan, which is the whole thing around advancing the economic justice for Black communities. So when I talk about this stuff, and we've talked about this amongst ourselves, the 3 of us, that when Black people talk about these things, we want to improve ourselves economically, we want to have advance economic justice, we want to bridge those gaps. We're not talking about taking anything away from white people.
Exactly.
Because the fact of the matter is, what we are able to do benefits white people. It benefits the nation. When we do things like this, and I'm not talking about being under the weight of that whole myth about who we are. about we're all criminals and we're all drug dealers and we're all on welfare and we're all this and all those other we are all of this, all of those other monolithic definitions of who we are as Black people. I reject all of that, because when I look at Camille and Samantha and Alexis and Amanda, I know none of that is the truth. This is the truth of who we are and the truth of who we have the potential to be. And this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. But it's not about taking anything from white people. It's about us just being able to build our own,
Right.
to take care of ourselves. That's what this is about. That's what this is about.
Beautiful story.
Yes.
I can't wait to meet these ladies.
Wow.
Yeah, they are amazing. I was just had a conversation with Camille the other day. And I mean, the thing that I love about the Emerald City, the office space, is that it really is a community. When I say that, I mean, in any given moment, when you walk into that space, you may see a mom and her kids are there with her. Mom is working, but the kids are there with her. And so these little kids, as a matter of fact, I was just there the other day. Cairo has been in that space, right? He feels so comfortable in that space. He just walks around. And so my office is on one block, so to speak, but he leaves my office, goes around the block and goes into there's an office, two offices on the other side where Alexis's office is, Alexis Russell, who is an architect. She builds stuff in the city of Pittsburgh, right? And then next to her is a woman who is a haute couture designer. And when you go in her space as a kid, it's like walking into this wonderland, because she always has stuff there for kids to do. So when we were there the last time, Cairo went to see Miss June. When I went around the corner to check on Cairo to see how he's doing, he's in there she had him building a wooden car. She just happened to have this wooden car kit in her space. She pulls it out, and now that's what Cairo is doing. Those are the type of people that are pouring into my grandson. And I'm so grateful for that. I'm so incredibly grateful that I can be in that space. He could walk around the corner, go see Miss June, go say hi to Miss Amanda.
That's free. I know it's inside, but he can walk and go where he wants.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
exactly.
beautiful.
But look at what that's doing for him, because he's in that space, and in that space are people who have their own businesses.
Right. The
He's
imprint
learning a
that's
lot.
leaving on him.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Anita, could you comment anything you've noticed in terms of how the ladies or whoever's operating in this building are vested in each other's success? In other words, I just so often get the sense that every business wants to knock out another one, but for some reason, I'm not getting that sense in the Emerald City.
It is the exact opposite of that. Their whole entire platform is about helping Black businesses rise, helping Black businesses be successful.
That's the principle.
I'll give you an example. One of the things that they're working on with me is through their network, getting my anti-racism activation program in front of people that they're connected to. Yeah. Right. So the same way that I'm doing the anti-racism incubator with the Forbes Fund, I'm also looking to do it through that space as well.
Right.
So they are very hands-on, extremely supportive. Yeah, that interlocking. Exactly. That interlocking is there. So we literally have about 5 minutes to go. And
we can all learn from that. We can all learn from that.
We can all
learn. It's a win-win situation. Again, it's not about somebody losing.
Exactly. And that's the basis of the Kwanzaa principles, isn't it?
Yeah.
Bingo.
Right.
Bingo. That's
Right.
exactly it.
Caring for each other. Yeah.
That is exactly it. When you read all of those different stories about how the Greenwood community operated in Tulsa, Oklahoma, all of that is embedded there. When you go back and look at the Homer G. Phillips, the hospital, remember that
Yeah.
community
Yeah,
that was
sure.
circled around? It's the
Yeah.
same thing. Those principles were there.
Yeah.
Right.
Those are the types of principles for the most part that Black people are coming from, right? And you can see how that's rooted in African principles.
Sure.
Ubuntu, Sawubona, I see you. I am because you are. Not this bootstrap mentality, right? So we only have a few minutes left to go. And I wanted to call out a couple of things to folks that are listening to us. We actually do have a private Facebook group. So if you go on under Inflection Point podcast, you can ask to join that group. It's a private group, but the idea is for people to bring their conversation, bring their experiences, bring their questions, bring their comments into a space where we can share that information. So it's a private Facebook group, and it's called Inflection Point Podcast, and it's open for people to kind of join our conversation. And I do have an anti-racism activation survey that I would like people to participate in as well. So I'm going to read it slowly so you can kind of get because I'm going to read out the URL. It's inflexionpoint.media/anti-racism-activation-survey. So I'm going to say that again, and it's inflection, INFLEXION point.media/anti-racism-activation-survey. So I invite people who are listening to go on. It's a very, very short survey, but it'll give me some of the information that I'm looking for in my work. So I'd like to leave you with these final words. And these words are actually from Camille Bailey, one of the women I was talking about earlier. And she says, the things that I have been exposed to in my upbringing led to my belief that Black people are capable of everything. If you have a business that you feel can contribute positively to the community, those are the types of businesses that we want. Very powerful, right? And so, as always, I relate this back to the Cairo question. Will 3-year-old Cairo have to protest in his lifetime for the birthright to freely and peacefully exist in the skin in which he was born? And that connects directly to this forward flow of human history. What we do today is going to impact his life tomorrow. So the final question is, what will you do as an individual to ensure that Cairo and his contemporaries have that birthright to freely and peacefully exist in the skin in which they were born? So I thank you for joining us on Inflection Point Podcast here on Transformation Talk Radio. We are here every first and third Wednesday at 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. Eastern time. We are excited to see you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of February celebrating Black History Month. Thank you. Thank you for listening to Inflection Point Podcast, where our mantra is cultivating change from the inside out. The journey towards anti-racism and social change doesn't stop here. Truth, reconciliation, and healing come from ongoing, open, honest, and deliberate conversations. Continue to dive in and deconstruct your thoughts, ideas, and beliefs as we band together to manifest social change. Tune in to Inflection Point Podcast every first and third Wednesday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, here on TransformationTalkRadio.com for more conversations about how we can cultivate change from the inside out.